Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's school committee meeting. Erica, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have a consent agenda, the minutes from October 11th, 2018, and oath to bills and payroll.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda and oath to bills and payrolls from October 11, 2018.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay. We have two sections in the meeting for input from interested citizens. This one now at the beginning of the meeting, one again at the end of the meeting. Is there any interested citizens who'd like to speak to the school committee? Seeing none. We'll move into recognition. I'd like to start by having the Littleton School Committee recognize Henry Whitcomb, who passed away Monday at the age of 83. Henry was a school committee member for 18 years, from 1971 to 1989. The Whitcombs are one of those great local families that span generations in Littleton. Henry was born in Concord, which most people didn't hold against him, but he was raised in Littleton and graduated from Littleton High School in 1953. Henry and his wife of 61 years, Barbara, was also a Littleton graduate, raised their family in Littleton. Their children graduated from Littleton High School, as well as several of their grandchildren. Given that, I think there's a high probability that one or more of Henry's 9 and counting great-grandchildren will probably graduate from Littleton High School as well, which would mark 4 generations of Whitcomb graduates. Henry and Barbara were also longtime supporters and volunteers for the See a New Sun Foundation, which is a program promoting suicide prevention and awareness. The family has asked that anyone interested in memorializing Henry do so by donating to the foundation, which can be done online by going to www.4sans.org. And we have that up on the screen for anybody who wants to take note of that. So thank you, we appreciate that. All right, Dr. Clenchey, into recognition.
Sure. We've had a very strong fall athletic season. Congratulations to our students, coaches, and parents. It's not over yet, and I'm going to read just a few statistics to you here. Football, we're 5-2 with 1 left to play. Good chance we're going to make the playoffs. Cheer is headed into a competition phase of the season. Boys cross country, undefeated, 7-0, most likely league champs, still pending. Girls cross country, undefeated, 7-0. They're also likely league champs, still pending. And golf, 11-4-1, league champs, headed to district tournament. Field hockey, 11-2-3 with 2 left to play, league champs, and they qualified for playoffs. Boys soccer, 3-8-4 with 3 left to play. They've had a tough season. They've had a number of injuries, which hasn't helped them, but they've played well and they've been very competitive. Girls soccer, 9-2-3 with 4 left to play, and they've qualified for playoffs. So another strong fall season.
All right, great. Student representative report. Maddie O'Meara.
All right. So for Shaker Lane, next Wednesday they'll be having their annual Halloween parade. Both the students and the staff will be looking forward to that, and all of the school committee members are invited, so if you wanted to stop by, go ahead. The Russell Street School, they're having bingo night tonight, which started at 6:30, so we're all late to that, unfortunately. The middle school, just the parent-teacher conferences started yesterday and also happened today. And the high school, the National Honor Society induction ceremony will be on November 7th. That's it.
All right, thank you. All right, we had a couple of school improvement plan updates from the elementary schools last meeting, and now we're going to get 2 from the middle school and the high school.
Yeah, we just wait for the mic to be set up.
We're just waiting for the microphone, so everyone at home can.
Oh, we go. We're good.
Oh, I have to do it myself.
We can do it for you.
There, I got it. I had it upside down. Good evening. So for our accomplishments for the SIP for last year for curriculum, instruction, and assessment, the middle school had implementation of new McGraw-Hill math textbooks this fall. There was an implementation of strategies for struggling learners. We have an executive functioning workshop that happened in grade 7. We continue to support the math lab, the literacy lab, the academic support center. And we've also incorporated grade level skill drills in math during flex block in grade 6. We have an implementation of strategies for advanced learners as well, including VHS, Virtual High School, National Junior Honor Society, and Problem of the Week in grade 6 for math. The development and implementation of 2 transdisciplinary units or projects per grade level. An example of that is the Enterprising People in grade 6. And we also this year incorporated a modified daily schedule to include a rotation in the mornings part of the schedule and also a rotation in the afternoon part of the schedule. And that has been very successful this year. It has met with a lot of excitement really for teachers and for staff. For professional development, the Littleton Middle School Professional Development Committee members attended district PDC meetings to review the model. We had building-based and district-based PD opportunities, including Facing History, Keys to Literacy, the iGen book group, PASCO, SLIFE curriculum development, and also technology implementation. The math teachers participated in multiple McGraw-Hill PD sessions for the new online textbook implementation, and administrators and teachers attended the MassQ for technology in the fall. For community and communication, we had a school-wide implementation of Aspen. All of our students have access to Aspen accounts. We also have an Aspen family portal is an open gradebook format for families to be able to look up grades, and students can also look up their grades and their assignments and homework and everything in the Aspen portal. The weekend update newsletter is submitted out electronically every Friday. The message board out front of the middle school is updated regularly. Our school and also all the teachers in the school have up and running websites. Teachers use email, Twitter, and we also had an Eat Lunch with Your Child Day in the fall. We also focused on the transitions between Russell Street and the middle school and also middle school to high school. We continue to have meetings and a visit to Neshoba Tech for our 8th graders, and we also visit Littleton High School in the fall, and Littleton High School staff come out to visit our 8th graders in the spring and meet with 8th grade and help to facilitate course selection. For climate and culture, the development and implementation of a revised advisory program. This advisory is always something that we have at the middle school. The exact model and format kind of gets tweaked every year, depending on the class and really what people are trying to have happen. So it's tweaked a little bit more this year as well, but advisory is always happening. We have an annual review of emergency protocols, both police and fire. We practice safety protocols in the spring. We also practiced safety protocols just a couple weeks ago, and we also do regular fire drills throughout the year. At the middle school, we have a Best Buddies program, and we also have a case collaborative that's located in our 6th grade wing. And the students in the case collaborative are included in some of our academic classes and our unified arts classes. In last spring, we had Randy Pierce, an inspirational speaker, do an assembly for the whole school from 2020 Vision Quest. We have had our 6th All-School Veterans Day assembly program last year. This year will be our 7th. We implemented a whole school spring picnic where everybody in their advisory brought food, and we had an outside picnic in the spring, which was wonderful. We continue to have turkey trot the day before Thanksgiving with games and a parade and a walk outside, and it ends with hot chocolate and cookies. can't beat that. And we every year have done something with providing holiday gifts for homeless shelters. Last year was Season of Giving. For technology, we have reorganized our Chromebook carts to make them easier to distribute and for teachers to have access to them. Our Chromebooks were distributed to special education, the learning centers, and to the academic support center. The library Chrome Lab is available to classes and students all day. We had the addition of many document cameras in the spring. We've also integrated the virtual reality goggles, and we also created a really wonderful makerspace in the middle school called the C Lab for being creative. It really is a wonderful space located right across the hall from the library. If you haven't been there yet, we received many generous donations from families in the community and also from Littleton Electric Light and Water Department. This space really allows students to show what they know in creative ways. This year, a couple weeks ago, I sent out a tweet at the beginning of the year showing the 8th grade book projects that students made to show what they learned from their summer reading. And everybody had created a project in the C Lab, so that was really great to see. And that is our update from the middle school. Any questions?
Questions or comments? Jen?
I was just going to ask about a little more about the changes made to the advisory program this year. You had any more details about that?
So we really try to involve the students in, really the goal of advisory at the middle school is to have kids talk. And so last year, our advisory, the year before last, students, we had it first thing on Monday, and kids were like, first thing on Monday, really? So we listened to the comments that they had made, and we changed it last year to the end of the day. And we allowed students to assemble their own groups, and we realized in pretty quickly thereafter that when students assemble their own groups, they're having fun talking to each other, but it's hard to talk about the topics that you want to talk about. So we really talked about, for this year, having it be happen more frequently during the week, but for a smaller amount of time to really make sure that the communication is happening during the week. And Flex Block at the middle school is something that happens consistently Monday through Friday. So this year, the tweak is that we're having advisory during the Flex Block time, and it is first thing in the morning, but we're anticipating that it will happen on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And the good part about that is if something carries over to tomorrow, it still can because that time. So I anticipate there will be some advisories that happen 3 times a week, but there'll be many advisories that happen 5 times a week because that's the group of kids that are together authentically every day. So that's our tweak for this year. But it's always, we really want to do what the students want to do, and the whole goal is to have kids be talking about what it's important to them to talk about.
She took my questions. So my only other question was how long is that Flex Block time?
Flex Block is 30 minutes.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
I'm good.
Thank you. I appreciate the talking about the transitions, because that is a big transition building, both on the way in and on the way out.
Yeah.
And it's not strictly just going to the high school. We talk about Neshoba Tech because that is a very viable option for a lot of our students, and knowing that they're all getting an opportunity to see what's there, and then they can their families can work with them to make a clear choice about how that works. And we're doing more partnership with Neshoba Valley Tech, so it doesn't have to be a kind of all or nothing decision, but all of them getting it if they do choose to matriculate initially towards the high school. It's always in the back of their minds that if there's things that are missing, or they decide later that, maybe that they want to get some more exposure to that, they know what's there, or at least have an idea, and then it piques their interest, and they can follow up on that.
So we've always had a member of the Neshoba Tech staff come out and do a presentation for the whole 8th grade, and for years we've done for any student who has wanted to go a field trip, and I think 19 kids went from our school just this week. With Sarah Dorfman and a couple of other staff members went with the kids, and they visited academic classes and shops. And then Neshoba Tech always lets us know when their open house is. It's coming up the first weekend in November, so that's always advertised in our weekend update, and I know that a lot of kids go to that as well. We also included last year, the fifth graders from Russell Street came over to the sixth grade to visit the sixth grade wing the week that sixth grade was at Nature's classroom, which was kind of nice, so they could just kind of poke around in the classrooms and not have kind of the stress of having the kids in there. And so they came kind of to an empty sixth grade wing to learn about it, and they ate lunch in the cafeteria. And then they came back a couple of weeks later when sixth grade was there, and we were able to assemble a panel of sixth graders that could answer their questions. And then we had 2 evenings when parents could come, and that has been a nice transition too, because I think that, the middle school tends to be this mysterious place over there when it's your oldest child, and so that has been a really nice transition plan for us as well, 5th to 6th.
Talked to one sixth grader this year, and it's early in the year, and I asked him, how's it going? He goes, the food at the middle school is awesome. So he was happy.
We talked about that the day the students came over for lunch. The lunch was hot dogs and beans, and it still was awesome, which I thought was amazing, so they were happy.
That's good. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
High school accomplishments from the last couple of years. A lot of these highlights you'll see, and a lot of the bullet points in the slides are for reference. There's a fair amount of detail here, so I'll focus on a few. A lot of them should sound familiar to the community and to the school committee because we've covered these in various curriculum presentations over the last 2 years from the curriculum coordinators, as well as an extensive presentation that's given each year by Dr. Jamie around professional development. So a lot of these things should be familiar to you already. You've also heard us talk about the Middlesex Community College partnership. That's something we're looking to expand, and over the course of the last 2 years we have, with dual enrollment courses in Latin, Spanish, and statistics. And we've also, some of our faculty have become adjunct faculty at Middlesex Community College as a result of their position in helping students obtain college credit through taking high school courses that equate with the rigor of Middlesex Community College. We've also adopted a high school, I want to highlight this for the World Language Department. This is on the path toward the seal of biliteracy, which will be a special distinction on the school graduate's diploma should they study 4 years of a world language and achieve proficiency by the time they're done with some type of assessment. But in the meantime, we have come up with the pin of biliteracy, which signifies something that a student just can wear at graduation. But it's an achievement in which honors the student's completion of 4 years of world language study. And we have quite a few students doing this, and we've had an increasing number of students doubling up in language too. I also want to highlight, though this isn't necessarily a school improvement goal, but it's worth noting, and I want to thank the alumni who have come back to talk to our students about various subject areas to promote the study of it. They've come specifically for world language presentations, and that's a tribute to the positive experience they've had with our teachers and with our coursework, that they went on to study at a more significant level in college and even have continued after college. This year we have one of our alumni, Valerie Higgins, is a substitute teacher for us the whole semester. She plans to go off to Spain next year and teach over there. She'll teach Spanish students English, but right now she's teaching our students Spanish as she fills in for Margot Gillen for this semester. So we're grateful for her. You can see that there's a variety of instructional technology strategies across departments. I won't mention them all. You can see them there. You'll see that throughout the different slides, that there's some that are very specifically noted, but I don't want to necessarily mention one and neglect another, so you can just capture that there. But there's an infusion of instructional technology to enhance learning at the high school. Also, in regards to curriculum instruction and assessment, we've integrated the EverFi financial literacy program into statistics courses, as well as economics. Mr. Festukas and I, Mr. Festukas is a history social science teacher, and I attended a gathering sponsored by the Digital Credit Union, and it's the local branch manager in Littleton is Bob Jumper. He's serving on the school council for Littleton High School this year, and we're very pleased with this program. There were a number of high schools just gathered together this past week to talk about integrating this into coursework. We plan this spring to build upon the success of the financial literacy program by having a financial literacy fair. We're not sure exactly the name yet. It goes by different names. You might be familiar with Reality Fair or Credit for Life. We're still exploring exactly what we'll do, but the PTA will help us a lot with that. So that's a highlight for sure for the high school. We also introduced some new courses this past year. There was an additional teacher, due to retirement, there was a teacher hired at the middle school for chorus and music, and that allowed Mrs. Bridge to spend more time at the high school, and she picked up a music theory class and also revived the history of rock and roll, I believe, as an elective, which was popular several years ago, and we brought that back for students who are interested in that. And there's also a film and war course this year that's met with lots of positive response from students. I just also want to highlight, I saw Mr. Tombino is here. I want to thank him and other members of the English department for sponsoring the college essay conferences. This has been something that it initiated with the guidance department and the English department. And I think it's now an established tradition, at least we hope it will be. It's a week of individual college essay conferences during which semesters meet with an English teacher to receive personalized guidance. We have a substitute teacher for an English teacher, and they're available all day for students, even students who they don't have. It's not necessarily that student is in their class, but they can get personalized attention and a lot of that has already happened this year. And again, we're grateful for that. I want to go to the next slide. You can see some additional details there. I'll just bring your attention to the bottom with the extensive array of curriculum updates. When we have those early release days, this has been mentioned quite a bit, there's a lot of things happening. It is very beneficial for our faculty, but also ultimately for our student learning experience. There's been a wide variety of curriculum initiatives. Some are required based upon state regulations or state changes. There's been changes in the science standards and changes in the history and social science standards. To mention a couple, that our teachers this is a constant process of curriculum alignment and renewal, looking at units, looking at lesson plans, and teachers collaborate extensively on this, and they need the time to do it. So again, thank you for your support of the early release days. Aside from that, we also have we provide time for teachers during the day, here and there, if it's requested. If they say, say a teacher were to request a day to get a substitute so they could work on a curriculum project. We've done this for various teachers over the years. If they had they were up against the deadline or trying to just, have some time to really focus during a school day. And that's been also very helpful. And Dr. Jamian has been very helpful in supporting that. Professional development. I'm going to definitely not be as detailed here because there's already been a comprehensive presentation provided to you by Dr. Jamian just this fall. But there's a variety of professional development experiences that teachers engage in. There's a list there for your reference. These will also be, many of these will be highlighted in our annual report that we do each year for the town, and that's published at the Maytown meeting brochure program. And we also highlight this in the district brochure. So you have lots of points of reference for this. I want to highlight something that's coming up, which is the cross-district PD with Air Shirley Regional School District as well as Harvard School District. This is a new initiative, and it's been really positive for getting teachers together from different communities, from the 3 different communities. And this is next November. Election. Yeah, it's coming up. And the teachers will be gathering once again. Also, a lot of our teachers who are in other curriculum departments, music, physical education, art, they have participated in the past couple of years in this thing called NPEN, which is the Northeast Professional Educators Network Conference, and they seem to really enjoy that and look forward to going back each year. I also bring your attention to the various conferences that our teachers have attended on social-emotional well-being, mindfulness. There's a mental health summit that I attended with members of the Wellness Committee and teachers last year and counselors. There's a wellness summit that's happening tomorrow. We're sending members of our staff tomorrow to that. So again, social-emotional learning is a priority at the high school and across the district. There's a number of professional development opportunities or experiences that teachers have engaged in. You can see for your reference in the packet. Next slide, community and communication. I want to thank the PTA, various parent associations, whether it's the Boosters, the Music Association, CPAC, the LEF for sponsoring so many things at the high school. I'm very grateful for that. And that's right there. You can see them listed here. I also want to thank the Executive Director of OpenCableTV, Mark Croy, for teaching our students the last few years. And we've been able to launch a show, a news feature, due to his efforts as an instructor and the sponsorship of the town's TV studio production course here at the town hall. We also have a very strong continuing partnership with the CASE Collaborative, which is a partnership focused on students with significant special needs. I want to just go back because I think I missed a slide. This slide here is the another partnership we have with the Littleton Fire Department, providing CPR and AED training to our students as a graduation requirement. But they also provide this to the staff, and free of charge. This would be costly if we were to do it outside, bring in outside trainers. So we're grateful for that. Last November, maybe we might be going on our third year. There's a Littleton Repair Cafe. This was a community effort. Residents came in, met with me. We're interested in sponsoring a repair cafe for folks in the community. They can bring in various items that might need fixing, and that's been well received. Some of the other options, other community events I've already mentioned, so I'll skip over those. Climate and culture. I'll give you a minute just to take a look at that. Madeline mentioned at the outset that we have an active National Honor Society, and the National Honor Society induction is coming up. I was very pleased to hear, I was talking to the National Honor Society advisor, Mrs. Steele, and she said there's a lot of applicants, a lot more this past, and we've seen a real growth, a surge in applications for the National Honor Society and in membership. And that's definitely a good sign for our school in terms of the academic accomplishments and the motivation of our students. We have an active student council and a Best Buddies program that's been recognized, especially for its unified sports, with their participation in unified sports, bringing students who have special needs with more typical students together in a sports setting to play together and enjoy each other's company. We also have a graduation requirement related to community service, and our students engage in projects throughout the year. And I think that's a testament to the really supportive culture we have, the sense of giving, the sense of service to others that our students bring with them. We also, I heard Mrs. Temple mention that she had Randy Pierce from Vision 2020 Quest, the name of it, come and speak to her students. It was such an amazing experience, transformative really for a lot of kids and staff, that we brought him to the high school, and he was met with great acclaim by the high school staff and students as well. Again, for advisory was highlighted at the middle school. We also have an advisory program. We do extended advisories at the high school as we integrate it into our schedule. There's a wide variety of things that you can see there that we spend our time on. It's particularly around various educational topics, career inventories, scholarship applications, anti-bullying efforts, executive skills development, various surveys and screenings such as the signs of suicide screening, depression screening. We're looking at our advisory program in the year ahead and looking to integrate more shorter advisories that are more frequent, 20-minute advisories, and have it on a more regular basis, similar to what the middle school does. And NEASC, our accreditation organization, is definitely a proponent of that. Okay. And then a few highlights here that will be in the district brochure that will be published in the coming months. Special Olympics, Massachusetts recognized Littleton High School as a unified champion school in 2017-2018. There will be a sportsmanship summit at Gillette Stadium sponsored by the MIA in November, and Littleton High School was recognized for outstanding sportsmanship with the Sportsmanship Honor Roll. And one of our students, Solvi Steven, was especially recognized for one of the best moments in sportsmanship over the last season. So we're proud to highlight her tonight. And then just some other various rankings that happen each year. Littleton High School continues to perform well in the various publications that rank high schools. In regards to technology, you've just received or heard a detailed presentation about the one-to-one program, so I won't go into that too much. Just to say that it's one of those the things that was clearly in our school improvement plan that we've accomplished, and we'll have reached full implementation of it next year. So you can see that. And I've already mentioned some of the highlights around how we integrate instructional technology, and we're proud of the efforts of our staff and the tech department to make that possible. Also, a lot of students participating in online courses at through various vendors. The most notable one being Virtual High School, which has had established partnership with our town and other surrounding school districts for over a dozen years. And last but not least, our faculty are actively engaged with various professional development opportunities that help them get better at implementing instructional technology. And you've received or heard already a lot of the details behind that, so I won't go into that just now. But I'll be happy to answer any questions. It was, it's been, if I look back, I can always look, as a principal, I can look back with great pride. I'm in a fortunate position to be principal of Littleton High School because there's so many wonderful things happening in a wide variety of areas. And this is just touching on it. So I promised Mrs. Temple I wouldn't go read every slide or bullet point. So a lot of them are for your reference, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Erica, any questions, sir?
Sure. You mentioned that there's a lot of professional development around social-emotional learning. Is there a curriculum you use, or are different teachers using different things?
We haven't adopted a out-of-the-box curriculum, and that's actually being debated in education right now. I remember just a recent Education Week article. It was about this very topic, and you'll find advocates for various curriculum and some that are opposed to it. The curriculums that are evidence-based, research-driven, second step, responsive classroom, open circle, are more commonly used at the elementary level. At the high school, I think our teachers, it's hard to be a teacher and not have some element of social-emotional learning embedded in everything you do each and every day. It's part of I've been saying this to the high school teachers when I've been meeting with them about goal setting, that it's in many cases it's part of their very being. It's who they are. It's what they bring to the classroom and how they manage themselves and what their expectations are for students, how the students manage themselves and interact with each other. So we have core values that we talk about a lot: respect, responsibility, integrity, accountability, perseverance, and teamwork. And those are things that I think all of our teachers are fully invested in and try to model and cultivate in our students each and every day. Those are aspirational in many cases, for some students where there are different ways along the continuum and in terms of their own adolescent development with their ability to demonstrate that routinely. But for the bulk of our students in the main, it's a wonderful group of students to have at the high school in terms of their general respect and responsibility. Nonetheless, though, we believe social-emotional learning is a critical piece to help students better understand themselves and how they interact with others and how they manage themselves. So you may have heard about this book that the superintendent has purchased for every staff member in the district, every teacher in the district, Social-Emotional Learning in the Classroom. Every teacher at the high school has received a copy of that, and is in the goal-setting meetings with Mr. Camo and me, we've been talking about how they will show examples or evidence of that at some point in the year so that we can mention it in their evaluation at the end of the year. Every teacher's been told that there will be a mention in their evaluation around how they did something related to social-emotional learning. For 99.9 or 99.8% of our teachers at the high school, this doesn't need to be a goal. This is an easy thing. They're already doing it. It's just letting people know what they do. And in this case, their evaluator. What explicitly can you mention to me or let me know about that you did that was focused on social emotional learning? That's the kind of conversation we're having now this fall with the teachers. So we're really invested in that book. A lot of the teachers have read it. I saw a lot of them marked up when they came to speak with me about their goals. So we don't have a curriculum, but it is definitely part of what we do each and every day.
Great. And building on that, so the extended advisory, is social emotional learning one of the goals of that time?
Yes, so we're as a school leadership team, we just met this past month to discuss what we'd like to do is expand our advisory or change up the format from having lots of, we still have to have certain extended advisories, which can be anywhere from, a whole period of 50 minutes to sometimes 90 minutes, depending on if we have a guest speaker or we have we're administering a screening of something, like the one I mentioned. What we want to do is have 20-minute advisories that would be meeting more regularly. We're going to talk to the faculty about this. The leadership team at the high school is discussing how we could roll it out each month, so that there would be 20-minute advisories that would be focused on a social emotional learning topic. But there's so many things. There's a lot of competition for our time, even those at the advisory blocks. So although I'd like to say to you that they'll all be dedicated to a very specific social emotional learning goal, it might vary, though. Yeah.
No, I'm good.
Jim? Okay, thank you, Dr. Baker. All right, we're going to talk about alternative structured learning day programs. And apparently that's exactly what we have to call it from now on, exactly that?
It's a much longer name than Blizzard Bags, but I think it really depicts what most districts that are embarking upon this journey are trying to do. So it's a fitting name, and we have a number of people tonight that are going to be talking about our work to date on this. It's an exciting venture. I don't want to take everything Jerry Lynn is going to say away from her. I'm just going to say 3 sentences maybe.
So you can say 4.
Can I have 4? Last spring, we were approached by a number of staff and some community members, especially after the number of snow days we had last year, and asked us if we would ever consider taking a look into the Blizzard Bag opportunity. The principals talked to their staffs in the spring, and we had a very positive reception to that idea. And as a result, the teachers we have with us tonight, and Dr. Jamian will tell you about the journey that we've taken so far. I think that was 4.
Thank you very much. This presentation itself, like the preliminary planning for this pilot proposal to set forth for your review, has been very much a joint enterprise. So I have been very fortunate to be able to collaborate with 2 teachers who have served as the instructional leads on this planning process. For the secondary, grades 6 to 12 level, we have Beth Steele here. She is currently an LHS Spanish teacher. And like other faculty members before at different schools, she embarked on in a program last year serving an administrative internship with Dr. Harrington, and in a continuing role in exploring different facets of curriculum and strategic planning. She has taken on the role of instructional lead for the grades 6 through 12. At the elementary level, for grades 3 to 5, Mrs. Kat Dale is also pursuing a pathway to expand her leadership skills. She's currently the grade 4 team leader, and this year she is completing an administrative internship for school building principalship at the Russell Street School under Principal Bazidlo. At the Shaker Lane level, Mrs. Deacon, who you met, the Shaker Lane assistant principal, worked with the principal and Shaker Lane faculty members and assumed a leadership role in the instructional planning. Mrs. Steele and I are going to start some of the slides for you, and then when we're talking about the school level planning, Mrs. Steele, Mrs. Dale, Ms. Garalisi, and Mrs. Kane will be talking about building level initiatives. So this title, you'll see it a lot, as Chairman Fontanella said, Alternative Structured Learning Day programs. They were first, these were locally approved programs that were first recognized by the DESE in February 2015. Burlington Public Schools on their website talked about being the first district to pilot one of these programs. And these programs are, it's important, they are possible solutions to scheduling issues posed by inclement weather, so that the schools meet state regulations regarding minimum student learning time, hours, and importantly, number of days, 180 days. We wanted to tell you right off the bat where this 5-word title came from. The blizzard bag concept was something that the state of Massachusetts and districts in Massachusetts looked at, that was existent in different operational models. Other states where there's a lot of snow, New Hampshire, Minnesota, Ohio, and the DESE adopted the term alternative structured learning day in place of blizzard bag, in place of the blizzard bag concept, because it reflects a variety of ways in which students may access assignments while outside the school building. And here in Littleton, we also have an emphasis on learning that takes place beyond the hours and walls of a school day and school building. Guidance from the DESE, the programs are designed to reduce the number of additional school days beyond 180 and to minimize disruption to student learning caused by weather-related emergencies. And finally, they must meet the standard for structured learning time. I've underlined it because that font enhancement will show. I'll be talking about it at a later time and in a later slide. And this is a rationale, and it's important to read and read out loud. And this is a guiding principle, PLE, one of my favorite homonyms. Although we firmly believe that the highest form of learning takes place in a classroom with a qualified teacher, support staff, or specialist, we also acknowledge that days made up at the end of the school calendar are not of the same quality as those that could be offered with alternative structured learning day opportunities. Next slide. Okay, here we have a record. We chose these years because these are the snow days called by a certain superintendent who was a superintendent in Canada and Maine, places where there's lots of snow. All
I guess it looks like I've conformed.
No,
First year was a little rough.
Yeah, but 2012, 2013, that was the only 4 snow days, but it was Hurricane Sandy, so around Halloween, no one could even go outside. The last 2 years have been a little, that's been a lot. 5 snow days and a number of delays. Okay. And here we go into going beyond DESE guidance to our guiding beliefs. We talk, and it's not just talk, about 21st century skills. And we're recognizing that our students will engage in some form of blended learning. They are. You just heard from Dr. Harrington about blended learning experiences, and from Mrs. Temple about blended learning within the context of middle school environment. And also when they leave our district and go on to college and career, they will most likely have an experience of working in a distant environment, either from home, satellite offices, or while traveling. And we feel these programs provide our students with the opportunities and, most importantly, work habits for this type of learning and this type of future employment. Okay, our goals for this pilot. And we talked about in each of the principles, PALS, SIP updates, they talk about transitions from one school to another. We're a K-12 district, and we talk about developmentally appropriate practices from one grade span to another. So as a K-12 district divided into elementary, middle, and high schools, we want to create a model that's flexible within the district, within schools, and even within grade levels to ensure that instructional activities meet the DESE definition of structured learning time. In this pilot, we are going for the full 5. Okay, the pilot, our endeavor in this pilot is to identify alternative structured learning opportunities for students to complete in lieu of making up 5 snow days at the end of the school year. This is the definition of structured learning time. It's from the state regulations. I have quotes around both segments of the definition. And it's important to recognize that state regulations recognize the different aspects of and different types of learning that qualify as structured learning time. And this is part of our guiding practice. Another part of the guiding practice is our district strategic plan. Right. We're not suddenly moving into a blizzard bag concept or operational model and leaving behind all of our guiding practices. That represent who we are in terms of teaching and learning. Put in capital letters, a focus on student engagement during the whole time that the Littleton Public Schools has implemented the state framework for educator evaluation. Littleton Public Schools has chosen as a focus element on the educator evaluation teacher rubric the focus element regarding student engagement. The administrative team met with representatives from the LEA around the August 2018 revised classroom teacher rubric set forth by the DESE, and again, student engagement is going to be a focus element for Littleton Public Schools. We have embarked on a series of district trainings that focus on another book that we have purchased for all administrators and faculty, and have had a series of trainings for the leadership teams, AC, ECC, SC, as well as webinars for faculty that are centered on the book by Robert Marzano, The New Art and Science in Teaching, and within the trainings on the new art and science teaching and in the goal setting conferences with teachers, one of the focus elements within that book deals with student engagement. Another one of our guiding practices is that our lessons are grounded in the learning standards of the curriculum frameworks, and that we are looking to make, and this is something the superintendent has emphasized in meetings with the administrative council and in focus discussions with the faculty in terms of expectations, that these are authentic connections to the curriculum frameworks. Blended learning is an established practice throughout our district at different levels. And then finally, within the curriculum frameworks, our emphasis is on literacy across the curriculum, on reading and writing learning standards. That's why you have the bold and italics there. From the curriculum frameworks, the exact words on the learning standards for reading across subject areas. And this is something that we endeavor. It's not separated into one period for ELA. It's not separated into what one teacher addresses in one academic discipline. These are the college and career standards for literacy, reading and writing across the curriculum. And I do wear that curriculum hat, so that's why I'm emphasizing that. Next. This is the DESE guidance that was set forth last year in the January 2018 memorandum by Jeff Wolfson, the acting commissioner, about the alternative structured learning day programs. And this is really what the faculty groups were talking. In a way, their discussions were guided by this, because how do we implement a pilot in a program that adheres to the DESE guidance? And in our preliminary planning that Mrs. Steele, Mrs. Dale, and Ms. Garlisi talk about, this is something that our pilot endeavors to reflect. The alternative structured learning day programs must involve substantial assignments and projects. It's not make work. It's not traditional homework assignments. That's not putting a negative valence on traditional homework, but this is in lieu of a full school day. And in a full school day, you do not sit and do traditional homework assignments all day. Equity is an important issue. We're talking about equity in terms of being accessible to all students, whether there's internet or not in their household, whether their households for programs that include a digital learning component. Many households do not have a computer per child. All right, and you have to think about, I don't know what your families are like, but we've had homework emergencies and we've had power outages. And this is something that the DE guidance is talking about. And it needs to be accessible to all students, whether the power's on or not, whether they have internet or not. And it needs to serve all students like our curriculum frameworks do. The raison d'etre for special ed is to make the frameworks accessible to all students, and that goes the same for alternative structured learning day programs. And then the central tenets underlying the approval process and the implementation process of any program or pilot. The programs themselves must be approved by the district's school committee. So the local, for implementation, second DESE guidance document came out. So for this year, for implementation anytime during the 2018-2019 school year, districts submit a copy of the locally approved program to DESE within 1 week after the date of local approval. This was really important for us. I had an extensive conversation with the DESE liaison in the school design unit, and it was important. They emphasized for school superintendents and district officials to understand that the student learning waiver time process does not apply to these type of programs where you have school closed because of inclement weather. These programs, all you need is local control, local approval. So what we thought previously was an October 31st to November 15th deadline for framing our pilot and the student learning activities has now been extended because of the flexibility that goes with local control, locally approved process. Another important aspect of the pilot and implementation in successive years is to conduct a survey to allow feedback from stakeholders in order to evaluate the success of these programs. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Stewart.
Thank you. So at this point, Dr. Jamian has discussed the idea very broadly at the state level, and I'm going to kind of hone us into more district level at this point. So our proposed timeline for the pilot program, we're here tonight just to kind of present the idea to school committee, and we plan on the next 2 months to have ongoing planning. During those next 2 months for our ongoing planning, what that's going to look like is educators creating these learning opportunities for our students, as well as defining roles and responsibilities for our educators, the teachers, but also for support staff, administrators, special ed staff, anyone else involved, defining those roles and responsibilities, as well as working on our technology interface with regards to our website connections and communication to all stakeholders, because that is a big, important part, is making sure all of our stakeholders are aware of what is happening with this program. We will come back on January 10th to ask for a final approval from school committee, so that way we can mail it in to DESE, as Dr. Jamian had just said. We are looking to start the program officially, the pilot program, on January 28th. We have picked that day because we know that all schools are on slightly different schedules, but looking at that date, January 28th is the first day of second semester for the high school, and it's just easier to have all schools start on the same day. And so we're looking to start the program officially on January 28th. With that in mind, we are looking at May 15th, so mid-May, having the student assignments actually due. So that would be the day where students are handing their work in to their teachers. Contingencies to this plan, of course there's always a couple, right, is that if there is a snow day prior to January 28th, our plan is to just tack it on to the end of the school year. So we'll make it up as we would in previous years. It gets attached on to the end. If our cancellations go beyond 5 snow days during our pilot period, anything beyond that 5th snow day, we will also tack on to the end of the school year. Hopefully that won't happen, considering our program is starting the 28th of January. I know I've heard it's supposed to be a bad winter, but hopefully it's not that bad. So hopefully we stick to the 5, at least, no more cancellations up until the end of the school year. But if in the case that it does, then we do have a plan to put them on to the end of the school year. With regards to planning district-wide, so some of our central tenets with regards to district-specific, we have really wanted to place an emphasis on the quality of the learning experiences that we're giving to our students. We would rather focus on quality rather than quantity, or just a simple compliance factor. Additionally, a second tenet that we have is that student work will never be due the day that students return to school after a snow day. So this is twofold. One touches upon the idea that Dr. Jamian mentioned, bless you, about access, right? If we have a storm and power is out and students cannot gain access to technology, or they may not have the appropriate materials such as books or articles at home. So we want everyone to have access to the material. The other reason is that, quite honestly, some kids on snow days have to work, or they have to go out and shovel, they have to help their families. And we kind of also just like the fact that kids can be kids on snow days and let them just go outside and kind of enjoy the day. And so that is really important for us to acknowledge, and for not to force our students to sit down to have to do 3 hours of work on a snow day when they may have other responsibilities vying for their time as well. Our third tenet that we're looking at is to have paper materials accompany all of our digital components of assignments. This is really to ensure that all students have access to the materials, and so in the event of a storm or in the event of whatever situation they may have. Our fourth and final district tenet that we're looking at is that we want access to student assignments through the LPS website. So we're looking for the LPS website to be the central platform that all stakeholders can go to for information and assignments, but then also we can attach onto that links to Aspen or Google Sites or Google Classroom, in which our students and teachers may use on a daily basis, and they're very comfortable with that. And so we will align that so there's access there. With regards to specific planning at the specific grade levels, before I explain the specific grades, how we got to these numbers is that we looked at the exemplars from other districts. And so the exemplars included Burlington, Melrose, and North Middlesex. And that's the guidance that we had when we're trying to figure out timing for assignments. And so what we decided upon was that grades K through 2, which is going to be our Shaker Lane school, their assignments are approximately 60 minutes. That is 60 minutes per snow day. So 5 snow days is what we're asking for. So a total of 5 hours of work is what we have for those kids. Then from grades 3 through 5, this is our Russell Street students. We have approximately 90 minutes for assignments per snow day. For grades 6 through 8 and 9 through 12, we got to the number in a little bit of a different manner. And so our 6 through 8, our middle schoolers, have 7 periods in their day. And so they have 20 minutes per each of the 7 periods. So 20 minutes times 7 periods is 140. We rounded up, so it was an even 2.5 hours. And then for our 9 through 12th graders, our high school runs on a 7-period day, but majority of our students actually have a study hall built into that 7 periods. So we based it on a 6-period schedule because most of our students, majority of our students, have 6 content classes. And so they are 30 minutes per each of 6 periods that they have, which equals 180 minutes, which is 3 hours. So that's how we broke it down into the time limit of assignments. And at this point, that's where we are for specific grade planning.
I call your attention to this slide, number 17. It's an important transition slide. Some of the things that, and about our process, starting last spring. You heard the superintendent talk about some of these things, but this really tells you, how we processed the DESE guidance and came up with the central tenets from DESE and from our district and merged our guiding principles with state guidance. So as Dr. Clinchy said, we approached faculty members and parents approached us about the Blizzard Bay concept. Many of them live in districts and wear their parent hat, where the Blizzard Bay concept is in effect under different operational models. And so the principals each one held a faculty meeting to gather faculty feedback, to sort of test the waters, to see what, if there were faculty interest in pursuing this, and also what the faculty thought would be practices, things to do, things to avoid. The phrase, let kids be kids and go out and play in the snow, those where, don't have something to do the next day, have certain junctures in which time students can complete their assignment, not on a snow day, prior to it. And so then the administrative council, an important administrative council meeting that the superintendent facilitated, the feedback from each of the 4 schools was shared in order so that out of that organically emerged, LPS guidelines and just initial priorities to embark on a pilot. Through the curriculum councils, we identified a date, June 11th, for a preliminary planning session. We had one session for elementary faculty, one session for secondary level faculty, and to identify parameters for student assignments, taking a look at things. It was just first testing of the water for how we would go about planning. for the next year. And I mentioned to you who the instructional leads were. The leads were on this instructional planning. And so we're looking now at, upon school committee feedback on this initial proposal, to continue instructional planning by representative grade level teachers K-5 and selected secondary level faculty. And an ongoing review of pilot documents and student assignments by the administrative council. That's really where we are in the overall process before we bring up the school-based leaders. So at this point, the next slide, Shaker Lane.
Hi, I'm Shana Garlisi. I teach second grade at Shaker Lane. Michelle and myself, a first grade teacher who was on maternity leave, so she couldn't meet with us over the summer, and a kindergarten teacher were all involved in that initial meeting with Jerry Lynn on the 11th of June, and then we got together over the summer to take a look at how we can adapt this program and modify it to fit the needs of all of our students who are the youngest students in the district, and they don't have as much independence available to them at home with their working and their reading skills. So we really took a hard look at the programs we have for blended learning, such as RAS Kids and Dreambox, and that are at their individual levels, as well as how to meet curriculum that we're already using in the classroom to create our Blizzard bags. So we have the technology available to them, but the technology we're using also has the ability to be printed out for students who don't have access to it at home. We took a look at our standards of mathematical practice per grade and touched upon what we felt often needed the most extra practice and review time for students, such as math fluency with their facts, numbers in base 10, things that we're working on a regular basis, spiraling back to throughout the year and throughout the grades at Shaker Lane. So we included a math component to each of our assignments, along with book and topic-based curriculum. So we took a look at what our science and social studies curriculum units are per grade level, and we found differentiated reading options on RAS Kids that align with them. So we have bags by topic. So kindergarten will have one that's on trees, one on animals, one on colors, that they have this science curriculum already in their classrooms, so they'll be doing reading to go along with it, a science assignment to go with that lesson, and math that hits a standard but comes back to animals or comes back to trees or colors, so that it sort of all is interrelated for them. First grade is looking at weather, plants, and animals for their 3 bags, and second grade is doing one on insects and plants, one on landforms, and one on solids and liquids. And then we also did for our 4th and 5th large topics, we looked at book-based curriculum, and we went with our social emotional curriculum, taking our HEART program from Shaker Lane, honesty, effort, acceptance, respect, and take responsibility. And we found a book that correlates with our program, and then activities that are connected to that for one of our days. And then we also took a more in-depth look at acceptance and ethnicity, and found a book that is available to be listened to online for all students in the building, and also a written copy if needed, where they'll then take a look at accepting themselves in their own skin and accepting others, so that, and then the assignments that go along with that, there's a written assignment, a math assignment that all connect back to that topic. So each day, our students will complete 4 activities, one with reading comprehension based on that RAS Kids program we have at home, or have for them available at home, another one on math, and then either science, social studies, or writing tied into the topic of their bag. And then we put in a 4th activity that ties into either art, music, or gym, because they'll also be missing specialists when they're missing school days with us. So we thought for our age children that having some physical movement, some art throughout their bags, and a little bit of music would sort of pull in what they're experiencing in a full day at school. Oh, yes. And we do have, in each bag, we put in approximately 15 to 20 minutes for each of these activities to get the 60 for the kids, but we know that within our own classrooms, we need to offer extension activities because we have students that finish quickly or are able to kind of look through everything and get it done. And we offered extension activities available with each bag as well for parents to look through, and they can download it, they can print it out. There's extra to be done for each bag so that kids can access more curriculum than they want to, or than is given. And they also have access throughout the school year to Raz Kids at Home, Dreambox at Home for math, and depending on the grade level of the students, they have Spelling City accounts that they can access. Second graders have Google Drive accounts that they can access to get more work in as well. So they have all of that still available to them as part of the extension activities with each bag.
Thank you.
I'm Kat Dale, fourth grade teacher. I want to begin by saying this has been a really enjoyable process. To begin, we started with each grade level gathering teachers, so we had about 2 to 3 teachers per grade level, as well as a special ed teacher at each grade level to help us make their Blizzard bags. And this allowed us to give our students bags that were accessible to all learners. So up on the slide, we have all the components that Russell Street School is looking to include. Our first one was blended learning model, and as it was alluded to, it's really important to have this available, not just online, but paper-based as well. So that process has already been done with each grade level. Some of the areas of blended learning that we have, for example, at the 4th grade level, we have Dreambox available for math. For reading, we have Storyboard That, where students are able to create digitally based comic strips to show their experiences of an immigrant through the reading that they looked at. We've also had teachers use scholastic videos as well as articles, so students are able to synthesize their information that has been learned and then present it in a diary. If we go to the standards of mathematical practice, the DOE provides educators with guidelines to help students become college and career ready, and this is one resource that we are given. It has students look closely at standards like making sense of problems, persevering, reasoning abstractly, modeling with mathematics, or attending to precision. So when we looked at that 3rd day in our Blizzard bag, that's something that we really focused on in our math practice. Book and topic based, so each grade level had a focus point, and a book went along with that. So the 3rd grade topic was kindness, and they covered kindness throughout all 5 days of their Blizzard bag. 4th grade looked at immigration, and 5th grade looked at diversity and racial justice. As you can see up on the board that we have ELA 2 days, math was 1 day, and student choice was 2 days. Next slide. Here are the books that each grade level will be reading. Grade levels also paired this with a text, so it might have been an article that they looked at, a poem that they looked at, and they're using their book and whatever option that the grade level picked to synthesize information, and then all grade levels are also focusing on answer protocol, which is something that we work in professional development to develop our reading responses. Next one. The last 2 days in the Russell Street and Blizzard bag is choice boards. We looked at it in a different way. So right now we have options for half days, or you can pick options for a full day. So this is where we go back to student engagement, and we know that the more students are engaged in their choices, the better that they'll do on the assignments. Our physical education teacher, our art teacher, our music teacher, and then Mrs. McGregor, who is our staff coordinator at the building, all came up with their own choice boards. So students will be able to access those choices if those are something that interests them. In addition to that, you can see that field trips are an option that are tied again to what that grade level topic was. And writing activities, cooking activities, and this is all tying in engagement, what student interest might be, and then the different reading, math, and writing standards.
Okay, and now we're at the secondary level. So looking at the secondary level planning, we decided that students would complete at least one assignment for every class that they have. So they have to touch upon every content class that they're currently enrolled in. Requirements set forth for the 6th through 8th grade. They have to complete 2.5 hours of ELA, so English Language Arts. They have to complete 2.5 hours of math, and they have to complete 2.5 hours of science. With regards to grade 9, they have to complete 3 hours of English Language Arts, 3 hours of math, and 3 hours of science. And then grades 10 through 12 have to complete 3 hours of English Language Arts and 3 hours of math. And for the sake of the explanation that I'm going to provide, it's important for us to acknowledge that we are asking for the full 5 snow days. And so doing the math out, if students have to do 2.5 hours at the middle school per day, it totals up to be 12.5 hours for the whole, all of the snow days together. And then at the high school, it's 3 hours a day, so 3 times the 5 days. We're asking our students to do 15 hours of work for the 5 snow days. And so when we look at the requirements, this is kind of where we get our student choice in, is that if we look at the 10 through 12, they have set for them 6 hours of work. So we're asking them to complete 3 hours of English Language Arts, and we're asking them to complete 3 hours of math. That still leaves them with 9 hours, and they get to choose the assignments when they finish them, in what order in the snow days. So they do have that element of student choice, so long as they are picking at least one assignment for every class that they are currently enrolled in. And something that's really important with regards to the secondary level planning, because there is so much student choice and flexibility for what our students are picking and choosing and how they're picking and choosing on the snow day. What will be really important are the advisory and flex block periods as a venue for our students and the advisory or flex block teacher to work with the students to review and plan their student choice boards. And so looking at the screen now, we have an example of what a student choice board is going to look like. So the top smaller grid has on the top day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those are our snow days. And then we have it broken down into hour-and-a-half blocks. Because for a lot of students, a lot of people in general, 3 hours to do one assignment is pretty lengthy. And so we wanted to break that down so our students can choose to do hour-and-a-half block periods instead of a full 3 hours. However, reverse to that, we have some students who are totally fascinated with some subjects and they could easily spend more than 3 hours. And so they do have that option. And so the assignment options is the second graph that you see on the screen here. And they will be filled in similar to what Kat Dale's block looked like, with the assignments filled in once they're completed. And so our students will get to pick and choose their assignments and fill them into their student choice board. So this, again, is where our student choice is coming in, which again leads to student engagement, because they're choosing assignments that they're more interested in, and they're more engaged, and they're more likely to enjoy and have a more authentic learning experience.
It's a 3-hour block each day. I think it's important to mention it's a 3-hour block each day.
Yes.
Can you just reiterate that?
Sure.
Because it looks.
And they don't have to sit down for 3 hours to
Correct.
complete it. It's completed over a period of time.
Per day.
Correct. Per day, yep.
Right.
So it's 3 hours per day, per snow day. And we have it broken down so that students, they could do one topic, 3 hours, or they could break it down into hour-and-a-half blocks. And then within that, exactly what Dr. Jamian just said, is that they don't necessarily have to sit down for 90 minutes to complete an assignment. They could sit down and start it, work a little bit. So we're not requiring them to actually be sitting for this full time. It's just that the assignment should take the student about this length of time is what we're aiming for there. Okay, so that's our student choice boards. So when we are talking specifically at the secondary level, and I include middle school in these considerations, is that assignments are course specific. Also, while maintaining student choice, students will be required to complete an assignment for each course. So they will have to touch upon all courses in which they are currently enrolled, but they could choose to spend more time on one subject or one assignment that they find more interesting. Our third consideration here is that AP courses are exempt of our snow day cancellation bags or program because of the pacing that College Board recommends and the schedule that College Board puts forth for the AP courses. Our fourth consideration is that we will have templates created for assignments at the middle school and high school. This is to kind of keep all teachers and students on the same page of understanding what the assignment is asking them to do and holding similar expectations. Following along those same lines, we're looking to create common rubrics for assessment for the middle school and then for the high school levels. So again, students are aware when they receive this information how they're being assessed and what the expectations are of the teacher. And we will have similarities amongst departments and amongst teachers so students are aware of how they will be assessed. So that's the secondary level with regards to planning specific. Now moving forward, again, I step back out of specific schools and moving forward together as a district. Our next steps are, first of all, to outline roles and responsibilities. As I mentioned earlier, we need to outline roles and responsibilities for our teachers, for our support staff, for paraprofessionals, as well as for administrators. And then we also need to map technology connections. And what we mean by that is that we need to make sure that we have this central platform of a website so that all of our stakeholders can go there for the information, as well as for assignments so students know where they need to go to get their assignments for the work that they're going to be doing. With regards to planning for next year, Dr. Jamian already said this, but we are going to have a survey at the end of the pilot program in order to gain feedback to see where the successes were in this program and then where we have areas of improvement to make. And so we look forward, I particularly look forward to seeing the survey results and how the implementation goes. So with that, moving forward, we would like to have a fall implementation next year and moving forward of this snow day cancellation program. The third step moving forward is that with all of this in mind and with a fall rollout of the program, we'll be able to make presentations to our stakeholders at back to school nights. So they're aware from the very beginning of the school year what is expected of them and of their students for this program. And then our last step for planning for next year is doing a revision of assignment due dates. Again, this is going to rely on our survey and our feedback as to was it a good time for our assignments to be due? Does that need to change? So a lot of these things will end up depending on our pilot program and our survey from how that pilot program works. So I invite Dr. Jamian back up.
And finally, I mentioned, and Beth mentioned, some of these resources. Both of the instructional leads created packets for the teachers who volunteered to be part of the preliminary instructional planning. As I said, the district and the administrative team utilized the memo, the January 5th memo from Acting Commissioner Jeff Wilson that set out the guidance documents in detail. Less in detail was Commissioner Riley's weekly update this year dated October 12th. That talked about the flexible timeline for local improvement. In terms of exemplars from other districts, we did take a look at operational models in other states, but instead we chose 3 districts to look at in detail as exemplars for student assignments and roles and responsibilities. And I have had detailed conversations with the assistant superintendents at each of the 3 districts. They're part of the curriculum network, which I participate in, and all 3 of the districts have have allowed us to utilize their documents and revise them as we see fit. And these districts have implemented Burlington and North Middlesex have implemented it for a longer period of time than Melrose Public Schools. And we're open to your comments and questions before the superintendent summarizes, makes a summary, and also if you would like any of the instructional leads to answer the question, they can participate as well.
Appreciate that. I appreciate the enthusiasm that you guys are clearly evincing here, and it's clear the amount of execution and planning that's going on. I also appreciate that the clear goal is not to, how can we get out of school earlier? It's how can we effectively, achieve some mastery of curriculum outside of the classroom. And there could be any number of reasons why we would choose to implement something like this. We talk about, outside the four walls and things like that. And so that's clearly driving. I would ask the school committee, before we sink our claws into this tonight, that we keep in mind that this is an initial presentation. We will get a follow-up presentation. The goal tonight should not be to solve all of what we perceive as the problems and any potential shortcomings that we think we've identified. I would ask us to raise issues to give guidance for the staff to go back as they continue the process, and then give them the opportunity to address whatever concerns we raise or questions that we have, rather than ask them, put them on the spot tonight to say, well, you got to fix this. How are you going to fix this right now for me? I think that would be quite unfair, given that this is clearly an ongoing process and will ultimately be iterative. There's no question that even if we get past the pilot phase of it, it will be iterative. Everything we do in terms of curriculum delivery and programming is iterative. So, but given that, I will open the discussion. Erica, do you have any initial comments or thoughts, questions?
Yeah, I think the amount of work that's gone into this is really impressive, and I love the choice boards, and I love the idea of letting kids be kids on snow days. And I think it's a fabulous idea, especially for the upper grades, because they can do so much of their work outside of the school. I did have a question about the timing for the high schoolers. So it looks like it's 3 hours of work for each day missed.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked like most of those assignments were either an hour and a half or 3 hours long. And they're supposed to have one in each subject that they're taking.
Yes.
What if we only miss one school day?
We wondered about that question.
It's a great question.
Yes, it is.
And we wondered about whether to put it on the calendar
Yeah.
contingencies.
So thank you for asking it and bringing it up. It is
Actually,
something
Beth,
that
could you just
Oh,
use the
sorry.
podium? That way
Yes.
people on television will
Yes.
clearly hear
Oh,
your
sure.
response. Thank you.
my 30 seconds of fame on TV. Perfect. Thank you for bringing up the question. It is something that we have considered, and we had it on the PowerPoint. We were like, because quite frankly, to be honest with you, we don't have the answer yet.
Okay.
So it is something that we are still pondering. We are going to extend that conversation with administrative council and kind of try and build a consensus around that. And so the short answer is, I'm not sure, but it is on our radar. So thank you for bringing it up.
Great. My other question was, obviously a lot of thought has gone into making sure that the bags are accessible to all learners. But what about actual special ed services that are missed?
That's also something that the administrative council and our director of pupil services, Justine Muir, are going to be looking into, and it's part of the detailed fleshing out of roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, and my only other thing was, as a kindergarten teacher, I'm trying to think of how I would plan bags that wouldn't be so hard on the parents of my students and wouldn't demand their time, because it is hard with the younger learners, so, but.
Do you want to come up and answer that? We, across the board, we have talked about, it's a particularly important issue. As you heard, Ms. Garalisi and Principal Kane will come up and talk about parent involvement. But also from a K-12 perspective, in my guidance to teachers in the initial planning, if we're looking for authentic learning experiences for students, I'm not looking for what the parents do on a snow day to help the students complete an assignment. Parent involvement is important, but not parents doing the snow day. So I would say as a general overriding tenet that we did not list thus far, the type of learning activities, maybe with the exception of a field trip, are designed so that they're developmentally and intellectually and academically appropriate for students to complete. And as we build in junctures and venues for students to complete them, maybe sometimes before a snow day, separate from a snow day, after school sessions, there are other times for students to complete that. So we're also going to be developing a frequently asked questions, an FAQ sheet. And on the exemplars from each of the 3 districts, there were different questions asked, but one of the questions on each of the districts, took on that parent perspective and said, what if I am not available to help my child complete an assignment? What if the parent is out working? What if the parent is, And so we really are taking pains to make the assignments developmentally appropriate and accessible for students complete, because we're looking at, not having an interruption of student learning.
Jerry Lynn covered a lot of what we looked into as well, and I do have some examples here where our packets all have an introductory cover letter to them for the parents that explain what the activities are, approximately how long they should take. Materials would all be included with it. And then we did look at, with our Reading A to Z, our RAS Kids accounts, we found all topics that had multiple levels of books available to the students. So teachers would go in and assign that book. So I could look at my class, or kindergarten teacher could look at their class and say, all right, I need these students reading this particular level, and my middle-ish readers would be reading this level of book, and high readers would be reading this level. And it also has the opportunity to read the book yourself and answer the comprehension questions, or listen to it and then answer the comprehension questions, or both. So that we looked at making the projects and the work that's in there as independent as possible. So some of the math activities would be what we would have students working at in an independent math center in the classroom. So they should have already been taught the lesson that goes along with it. And then they would work on it independently in the classroom. So that was the level of work that we sent home and put into the bag, so that it wouldn't fall all on the parents. But obviously with students who are this young, they're going to need some guidance to say, okay, this is the activity you're working on, and maybe some reading of directions, but it shouldn't be like a parent teaching the lesson to the child.
And we really have to look at the student strengths at that age. They're very verbal. We have opportunities for them to explore something that they're interested in, come back. If they have access to an iPad or a computer at home, they can do a Flipgrid presentation. I mean, there are many different ways that young learners can engage in learning without being in front of a teacher. They're doing it in a classroom with a teacher, but independently already in school in our kindergarten classes for certain activities during the day. But that's an important point that you brought up, because we've been brainstorming that for a while, because they are very young.
And then I'd like Mrs. Dale to talk about the issue of parent involvement and independence for the intermediate elementary level.
Thank you. So as Ms. Garlisi alluded to, we really took thoughtful planning and how can we make our Blizzard bags accessible to all learners. So a few ways that we did that. So the mentor text that I alluded to for each grade level, one way that we were thinking about, so Principal Vizillo, for example, will be reading and doing audio recording of the 3rd grade book. So that'll be available for students who might not be at that reading level, but they can still participate in the activity. Another way that we're thinking about this is providing models and exemplars for what each activity might look like. So, for example, because I was on the 4th grade planning team, that's the ones I can pull off at the top of my head, but we did a postcard where they had to write back to their family as if they were an immigrant. So they're changing their point of view. We're tying in the reading standards and writing standards that way. But then we've also provided an exemplar of what that letter should look like and basic formatting of it. So those are just some ways that we're looking at in Russell Street School to make sure that all students are able to complete these bags more on the independent side.
Eric, are you good? Yeah.
I just want to say, first of all, I love the idea of the alternative structured learning days. I wish they had them in the district that I teach, because I can vouch that in June, when you get to those last days, they are not of the same quality you would have in the winter or the regular part of the school year. Kids are just, they're checked out at that point, and so are many of the teachers. I guess my question would be, as a high school teacher, if obviously you can't plan and know when a snow day is going to happen, so if I'm learning about World War I in history that day, and the next day is a snow day, I'm not going to be learning necessarily about World War I. It's going to be a more general topic. So I just want to know, say we had 5 snow days, how would that affect the scope and sequence of a certain classroom? I know that, I struggle to get everything completed by the end of the school year that I'm supposed to cover. So if I don't have 5 more days to teach, that could really impact. So I'm just curious if that has.
And we have talked about that. That's one of the considerations and the complexities that we move to a course-specific assignments, 9 to 12, rather than grade-level assignments. The choice board K to 8 is very much grade level, but 9 to 12 is very, very specific in terms of course specific. And the feedback, Dr. Harrington was part of one of the planning meetings that Mrs. Steele and I facilitated, and faculty members said, AP courses are not the only courses where you cover material, or there is a sequence, but there is a specific mandated pace and coverage of curriculum for AP courses. I would take, because I wore the history teacher hat, and it was history, Mr. McGinnis is here, taking what we have as part of our core secondary planning group. We've had 3 different history teachers be part of that. And the history faculty have emphasized the use of primary sources. And we have purchased programs where document-based programs where there's primary, secondary, tertiary artifacts, comparison of primary and secondary sources. So within the chronology of a European history class or a U.S. history class, the teachers can establish, separate from whether the snow day is April 15th or March 1st, the student choice option of looking at different documents, in that, historical chronology, and maybe say, compare what a primary source said about Charlemagne to what a history textbook said about Charlemagne. And those are key habits of mind in historical inquiry. And in the general planning that the history department has talked to me about, it's very much, there is a tradition at Littleton High School, and it's emerging more at Littleton Middle School, of document-based study. And then that's my general response to your question, but I'll have Mrs. Steele give a more specific.
So I think what's interesting about your question is that, and I would argue as a teacher, a lot of times when we have a snow day, we kind of make up that work pretty quickly after the missed day. And it makes it a little bit more obvious in the MCAS subjects, right? So when we have a snow day, the day that we historically have put at the end of June, MCAS is said and done, right? All of our standardized tests, all of those are done. So the assignments that we're making, full well knowing that these days that are being missed are in the middle of the winter, typically, before MCAS has happened. So we can take advantage of that and use these assignments and in general, but also really specific to MCAS, is that the teachers of MCAS topics can take advantage and create an assignment that is general and skill, so that it can help our students improve their potential MCAS ability and success. So that, I just want to make sure I touched on that.
I definitely see that. Good. Thank you.
What's MCAS?
I can speak for the high school. English is typically, it may change with the MCAS 2.0, but in the past, the English has been in March, and math is in May, and science is usually in the first week of June. I think it's changing a little bit.
Because then the only other thing I would say is, right, so some MCAS happens before the due date of projects.
Yeah, so you actually gain instructional time in the course prior to the test, which can be helpful, especially on, skills and content have to be together, but, we have a strong skills emphasis in K-12, or pre-K-12. And so, there's certain skills, and you mentioned that with the habits of mind, inquiry, research, document-based approach. The skills can be taught in using something of, in case of history, historical significance. Skill transfers to different eras of history.
In other subject disciplines as well, it's a matter of ensuring your assignments are authentic, application-based, and even if they're not due until May, as a teacher, you can blend in what your students have been working on during those snow days. So I look at this as an opportunity as well to develop opportunities through critical thinking skills to instill long-term memory, which I think we really need to focus more on in our instructional approaches. So, there's always benefits. There's always going to be hesitations or areas that we need to look at solutions for. But you also have to remember that we're not trying to replicate a school day. But what we really want to do is have staff design activities that are authentic, they're excited about, and activities that they would want to do anyway. As soon as I make that statement, to me, that's my litmus test. Because if they really want to do them, they're valuable, and they're going to do them anyway.
Do you have any other questions? I'm excited. I think it's a very interesting concept. We're clearly not doing this in a vacuum. This is something that's being considered on a broad base across the Commonwealth. So I appreciate that we're going along with that. I think it has significant benefit beyond. I think we should do it anyway. I think the idea of fostering independent learning and giving students, especially the older students, but even the younger students, an idea that they're in charge of their own learning, I think is very valuable. I would like us. I know you won't forget that parent communication and understanding, the family's understanding how to execute on this concept will get dealt with. And you talked about how if we implement this going forward, we would start in the fall, so they would have a good idea. But if we drop this in their laps on January 8th or 28th or whatever the date is, we're going to cause rioting in the streets. So if we could just start to communicate with the parents to give them a broad outline, it doesn't have to be detailed, but a broad outline of, hey, we're working towards this, we still need school committee approval, but assuming that we get it, this is the idea that's going to happen. So they're probably going to come right back with questions and concerns, and it'll distract you guys a little bit. But I think if we start it now, the students will be better off and the families will be better off. So we could ask for that. The other thing I would ask is before the school committee gets the next presentation in January, can we get physical examples of them
Yes.
ahead of time,
Yes.
so that we can touch them and look at
Yes.
them? Not looking at it like this, to actually, pull it out of the bag and
Yes,
see
and with
all
the
of it.
books.
Yeah, and
And
have,
the
one
readings.
for each
That would be
of,
great.
I think that'll help
One for each
us
school.
understand exactly what it's gonna look like.
It's a great idea.
It's a great idea.
And then, I think that was it for now. I do trust you guys will continue to work the process. I think we raised a few issues here. And good issues, but ones you guys are like, yeah, we're still thinking about that, which
Yeah.
is perfectly fine.
And then I like the idea of, once we have, we've come to you now for permission to go forward with the pilot planning to communicate with the parent community
Yeah.
what the broad outlines are, because out of those questions and concerns, we would be better able to address certain, those in our
Right.
next step plan.
And I would even go so far as the older students, let's say the middle school through, they should probably get an idea this is coming too. Because they'll be able to, they'll have questions of their own, right? The younger kids probably are gonna be like, whatever, I don't know what you're telling me, other than, don't tell me I can't go sledding, I won't like that. But, and again, and the same thing, some of the assurances that, you don't, if you need to go outside or I knew kids that plow. They have pickup trucks and they go plow. So letting them know that they won't, you'll still be able to go plow and
It's very important to them.
cash your coin. Yeah, exactly. I think that'd be good. Maddie, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I think it's good. Yeah. I like the sound.
Oh, we have a real life student here. React.
What do you think?
Oh, yes, that's right.
I like the idea of not tacking extra days on. It's like when you have the snow days, you're like, oh, thank God, I don't have to go to school. But then once you get to June, you're like, oh, I wish we didn't have that. Like, I wish we went to school.
Yeah. Except I will tell you, I had that discussion and I never won the argument because my kids just couldn't see how smart I was. But the one group that's going to balk are the seniors. Because their finish date is hard, right? It doesn't matter how many snow days there are.
We even debated that. That was actually even a debate, because there were some faculty members that said, does this apply to seniors because they don't have to make it up? And then other faculty members, including me, said, seniors are the ones that have the most
They have the
crunch
benefit
time.
already.
Like you
Right.
said, Matt, because
Right, it's
they're the
true.
ones that have that hard end date
Right.
to when they take
But we're
their
still gonna get the work
test.
done.
And they have to get the work done.
Right.
And if you're a coverer of material, okay, and you lose those days, you've got more of a crunch time.
Right. And I'll reiterate the point that you guys clearly made. We're not asking them to do 6 hours of work on that day. We're not even actually, technically, we don't have to do any work on that day. They just need to do 3 hours of work to replace that day, academic work, sustained academic work, legitimate academic work.
Yes.
So they're still going to cry and yell and jump up and down, and we know.
But,
They shouldn't.
and Principal Temple wearing her parent hat, when we were discussing the, different ways that parents and families can approach this, and I quote her all the time, so she knows, what I'm going to say now. She actually said to her kids, like, if you have a long-term homework assignment and it's a rainy Saturday,
Right.
or kids are bored in the middle, or we put certain assignment due dates around vacation times, she said, have the kids sit down either after school or in the middle on a Saturday, and get it done ahead of time.
Right.
So we're gonna flush,
There'll be tips.
when Beth and I said that, we're gonna be taking a look at due dates, there would be several junctures in which, kids, even the little ones, can check in with their teachers or check in advisory and get a certain amount done, or after schools, help sessions. You get excellent Friday updates from each of the 4 principals. There'd be clues about that, and times when they could work in school. These are the things that are percolating, our ideas, we just haven't.
Heaven forbid they actually did 185 days of actual good work and enjoyed it, right? Wouldn't that be crazy?
And actually, I said to the superintendent and 2 members of the secondary core planning group and the elementary, there really isn't a teacher I've met beyond year 1, and even year 1 teachers as they go through the year, that hasn't said, I got this assignment I really love, but it's just too long to do in one class period. And to allow kids to write. Mrs. Dale talked about the answer key writing routine that you have a student read a story, and then there's an extension in writing in before they know it, without looking at the clock, an hour and a half has passed. You just don't have that block
Right.
of time during a school day.
Thank you. We look forward to the next presentation. It's
Appreciate
going
the
to
feedback.
run right up on us, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is.
Yeah, a lot of
Thank
lines
you.
going fast.
Thank you.
Just a couple of comments. The first one is, if I look at the pattern of snow closure here, you can see in 2015, 2016, I went down to 3 days. So that just shows you that the decision-making really truly goes on the weather that we have before us. I'm really impressed with what I saw this evening. It's very evident to me that a lot of thinking has gone into this, and creative thinking. And what I really like about what I saw this evening is everything that you've talked about is about extending learning, authentic learning, and application of material, installation of long-term memory. All those things are important, and not in one area of your conversation tonight was there a hint of, oh, this is just an assignment. And so I want to commend you on that. And I realize how much time this took and dedication. And as a superintendent, I'm very grateful for your passion and your interest in helping us look outside of the box, which is so important as a district. So thank you. I've been trying to get my head around, and again, I taught for a number of years in classrooms, mostly high school, but I've taught a subject in every grade but kindergarten, believe it or not. And the only thing I really did in kindergarten is help kids get their snowsuits on at recess time. So I don't have any technical experience in kindergarten. But
That's one of the
In
hardest
the-
jobs in kindergarten.
yeah, it is.
Especially in Canada.
Well, we do it a lot there. But a question I really have is when we look at this from a methodical approach or mathematical approach, we're actually doing work equivalent to half days in the end, actually a little less than half days, which is fine because we don't want to take away the adventures of snow days, et cetera, and our older students do have other obligations at times. But when you look at the planning, and I know there's the initial planning that takes a little longer, but if we were to look down the road, would you, and I'm not going to hold you to this, I'm just curious, would you feel that doing something like this would take less time than if you had to teach 5 full days, or the same amount of time, or does it depend on the year? Because I would imagine you wouldn't be doing the same thing every year. Every now and again, every couple of years, you'd probably want to relook at it. But I'm curious, and I'm sure you probably thought about this in the big scheme of things. I always look at it from a point of view of being able to do something that cements critical thinking skills, something I probably want to do as a teacher anyway. Is that already part of my long-term planning when I'm planning units and lessons for the course? But I really need to hear from you. I mean, I'm not in the classroom anymore. And although I had exams when I taught high school that were worth 50% of the student's mark. So snow days or not, we had to get the curriculum done and teach it well. Because we were also expected to be within plus or minus 5 deviation of school awarded mark compared to the standardized test mark that the students were awarded. And if you don't feel comfortable, if you're not ready, that's fine too.
The teachers are the ones to answer.
Great question. This is speak from my experiences on what we've done thus far in the planning process. I really enjoyed it. We don't get at Russell Street that many opportunities to work and plan grade level, and it's really nice to see all the different aspects and talents that grade level teachers can bring together, and then also utilizing the special ed teachers. So from my experiences, it was nice to sit down and work with my 4 colleagues and plan these blizzard bags that meet all grade levels, but then are also bringing in so much talent. So I really enjoyed that process, and I think it enhances even more than what we're doing in the classroom by bringing in the technology and the creativity and the rigor. Additionally speaking, we Initially, when we were thinking about this in the summer, at the beginning of the summer, from 3rd grade to 5th grade, we wanted to do one book. And then we thought about it that wouldn't make the most sense because this is something that we need to go revise year after year. So what we did was we picked one book per grade level, and we're going to go through it this year and then reflect on it. Well, how can we make it even more accessible, more challenging, more engaging, and tweak it for next year? So it's going to be the signed work of art that we have that we're kind of molding into the best piece possible. So going back up the question that you mentioned earlier, okay, this type of student has struggled with this activity, what modifications or accommodations can we make so those students next year are successful with it? So I hope that answers your question.
It does.
It's a fine work, and it's been enjoyable, and it's been different than my other experiences on planning in the classroom.
Thank you.
We had a bit of a similar experience where the idea of doing one book for the whole school was looked at originally, but we sort of took a different approach because the reading level in kindergarten, which is just beginning to read, versus a reading level in 2nd grade is very different. That's where they showed like the most growth in reading over the course of those 3 years. So we actually met over the summer with a representative from each grade level and spent a lot of, like 2 days we met to plan and really dive into how can we get everything aligned with curriculum and get what we want in there, which was nice to have that cross-grade planning as well. And so 3 of our bags, we'll call them, or 3 of our days, can, similar to CAT, stay the same from year to year, where we just go in and make any necessary adjustments after kind of piloting it for the first time. And then our other 2 bags were whole school bags. So if we were to use them year to year, kids would be doing the same thing. So we would then go back and look at how can we take our social emotional bag from this year and change out the book, change out the topic, and still have it relatable, but it wouldn't be the same as the year before. So there would be some planning that would be needed to be done from one year to the next, and we would likely, I imagine, get together over the summer and do it again so that it's not taking away from the planning time that we always feel we don't have enough of during the day, at least at the elementary school level. I know that it's my 2nd year, and I could have like 4 hours of planning time and still want more, just because we're getting everything in every day. So this was great to collaborate, but also find a way that works for us so that it's not reinventing the wheel every summer, it's improving it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think with regards to your question specifically, is it going to take less time, equal time, or more time than teaching 5 days? I think I'd like to reserve an answer until we go through a year, quite honestly, because
That's a good answer, too.
because I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of different aspects to look at. So I think planning-wise, this is my 10th year teaching, and immediately when we first started talking about this, I was like, oh, I could do this project, this would work, and coming up with all these different ideas. It's almost now that I'm like, oh no, I have too many thoughts, and I have to hone in on one specific. So there's that idea. There's the idea of the correcting, right? Once we get that, because that's also time that, my grading pile is very sadly large at this point in time. Like it's just that constant battle of trying to keep up with what our students are doing. So there's also that there's a whole nother time frame. But what I will agree with what our other 2 teachers have said is that the collaboration and the potential for collaboration is really, really exciting to me. Not only within departments, but then outside of our departments. So potentially working with a teacher from a different department to create, a historical world language project or something to that effect, I think is really awesome. And of course, doing something like that would take a little bit more time and more planning. Right. And then with regards to year, I think we can, at the middle and high school level, we could have assignments that roll over from year to year because we're doing course specific and our students take our courses once. So they could roll over year to year, but I think like any good educator, which we have a lot of really awesome educators in our district, is that it's something that we will look at year after year and say, okay, how can I make it better? What can I do different? Or, the topic has changed a little bit and maybe we change our perspective on it. And so I think there are a lot of different components with regards to what you're asking.
Very true. Thank you.
right, you good? All right, thank you. Thank you all. You are free to go.
You might
More of
wanna
this stuff
stay.
you do. You're welcome to stay. You're welcome to stay. All right, we are on to old business, the distribution of meal charge policy, EFD.
Yep. In your packet, you approved it as a school committee last meeting. I just wanted to make sure you had a clean copy without all the strikeouts and red ink, et cetera, on it. So that is on the website and is in the process of being circulated to all schools. The administrators will circulate it or talk about it at least with their respective staffs.
Okay. All right. Under new business, the first item we have is we have a discussion on question 3, which is a ballot question coming up to vote a week from this coming Tuesday. It's a Massachusetts veto referendum. It will be on the ballot on November 6, 2018. A no vote would repeal a 2016 law that prohibits discrimination in public accommodations on the basis of gender identity, and a yes vote on question 3 would preserve the existing law. Jen, I think you introduced this topic, so do you have anything you want to lead out on with it?
In bringing this up, I feel like it's very important that Littleton as a school district lets it be known that we're there for students that might be struggling with, what's going on in the entire state with this question, and we're just there to, back them up or, take a stand.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts or comments?
I would just say, as working as a teacher who's worked with several students, transgender students, I think this is a really dangerous ballot question. So I don't want to get too political, but I think what Jen said, we have to support our students in this regard.
Erica?
Yeah, I think our job is to make sure that we are protecting all our students in their learning environment, and there's a plethora of research about how badly impacted students are from the negative climate or being kept out of public spaces. I think there was even recently a school that left a child out of a lockdown drill because they didn't know which locker room to allow her into, which is just unfathomable to me. So I think it's important that we make it known that we are here to protect all our students and that they're welcome.
I'm going to have Dr. Clenchey speak to this a little bit too, based on DSE requirements, because this particular ballot question, I think, is targeted more towards the law. DSE already had guidelines in place for how public schools were supposed to deal with this particular issue. Then the law was passed, and when they talk about public accommodation, the idea was that restaurants, bars, other businesses would have to basically, conform to the same kind of execution on this that the school districts are already doing. I have objections. I support the idea that you guys are echoing wholeheartedly. I think we need to support all our students, and I don't think this is a big deal as people are making it out to be. But the other problem I have is I just think this is a terrible way to legislate. I don't really support ballot questions in general, because it's very difficult, especially this type of thing where a law was passed. The legislature debated and they voted. There are some ballot questions that come up because the legislature just refuses to take action on things that the citizens feel are extremely important. That's a different kind of story. And even then, I'm still hesitant about ballot questions as a way of legislating. Daryl I did have a quick talk with him when he called me to let me know he wasn't going to be here today due to illness. And he kind of had the same objection relative to process from a legislative perspective. But he also had concerns about, privacy. And that's, for a lot of people who are debating this, it's a question of, how do we support privacy in, access to accommodations. And even though the DSE has given, us districts guidelines on what they expect, they haven't really given us guidelines on how best to execute on it. And and I think we're going to have more debate upon this. If next time we go through a building renovation, a significant building renovation, this may very well be a topic. Is there a better way to design our facilities so that everyone feels comfortable in every circumstance? And there are ways to do that. So that was kind of his point of view. Dr. Clincher, what are your thoughts relative? We're talking about the ballot question, if it did or didn't pass. What are we thinking about in terms of the DESE guidelines and your own perspective as the person who has to implement?
First of all, it's our responsibility to make sure that every student in our district is valued, respected, feels a sense of belonging, and has a positive learning experience with us. DESE has published guidelines a number of years ago that we follow within our schools, and it's titled Safe School Programs for LGBTQ Students. So Massachusetts in particular has been a forerunner in ensuring, for school systems anyway, that leaders in schools and districts have the support that they need to actualize the last statement that I made. So we're in good footing in terms of guidelines that we can use for all of our students. The bill, when I read it, really speaks to excuse me, areas. They didn't mention public schools at all. It was other areas in communities within the state. So I was pleased that schools weren't mentioned, and I'm just wondering. I guess the bigger question is, does that bill pose a threat to well-established guidelines that the Department of Education has been using for years? I would like to think no. I guess under the worst scenario, and I don't even know if I don't like going into what ifs, but in this particular situation, when you're in a political scene where certain things emerge, you have to think about all angles. If there was legislation that did any reversal on any rights of any group, then the next question would be, in terms of the Department of Education, would they ignore it? They have the ability to ignore it. They could stick with their guidelines. They also have the ability to change guidelines. But then you have to ask yourself, as a community, we still have the right, more correctly, to do things that we feel are in the best interest of all students. The only difference in that last comment is you don't have the protections that you currently do as a district. But then I go back to if it's our value system to serve all students to the best of our ability, that should be our driving force. But the only caveat I'm going to say or present to you is none of us can predict the future. But at least we have something in place that is firm, tried and true, and has worked well in our district and many districts throughout the Commonwealth.
I would just add that despite the fact that this particular question doesn't address schools directly, I think it's important for us to take a stand on it and let our students know that we support them no matter where they are in our community, and that even when they leave the four walls of our buildings, that we feel that they're important and that they should be respected and have the dignity to be able to say who they are and express that.
In my opinion, even in the days and weeks leading up to the vote, I feel like this can be seen as an attack on a certain group of people. And making a statement now before the vote, before we have, an answer of what the state has decided is really important to me, to make sure that the students do know we support, their identity.
Anyone want to? Put a motion on the floor?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that the Littleton School Committee support a yes vote on Massachusetts Question 3 on the November 2018 ballot in order to preserve the existing law that prohibits discrimination in public accommodations on the basis of gender identity.
Motion made, seconded. Just to reiterate, a yes vote on the question keeps the current law in place, which provides protections in public accommodations for individuals who identify as transgender, versus a no vote repeals the existing law. So our motion is to support a yes vote, and it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion on that? All right, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you. All right, in a similar vein, although be it more focused, the MASC conference that's coming up that we will have attendance at. Annually, they have various resolutions, and now we can decide if we support or don't support or have no opinion on these particular resolutions. The resolutions are in our packet. I don't know if anybody took a look at them, and if you have, does anybody want to start and just, we don't necessarily have to debate each one individually. We can just say we have no position on that, and I think there are a couple that maybe meet that requirement for us because they're not necessarily relevant to Littleton as a district. But if there's any particular resolutions that you feel are relevant to Littleton and you want us to take a stand on, let's have them.
Well, 7 is in a very similar vein to what we just were discussing, I believe, so.
All right, so it's So, Resolution 7 is gender identity inclusive of athletic participation policy, and it's resolved that the MASC help file legislation which would have the effect of protecting LGBTQ students from discrimination, harassment, and bullying by the schools should, I don't know if it's grammatically correct here, but schools should treat students based on their gender identity, protecting their privacy, providing access to gender-neutral restrooms, locker rooms, and private stall showers, using their preferred pronouns, embedding sensitivity training and professional development, and providing uniform accommodations. All right, does anybody have any comments on that? Well, Erica's right, I think we basically had this discussion.
Right.
All right, I'll entertain a motion then.
Make a motion to support Resolution 7.
Good enough.
Say any more than that?
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right. Anything else?
I mean, I don't know if you want to make, I pretty much supported all of them, except I had some questions about 5. I don't know if we want to support.
5. Catch up.
Reporting and accountability standards.
Yeah, I just don't know if,
Resolved
How
that
much?
the Massachusetts Association of School Committees works with the legislature and Board of Elementary and Secondary Education to ensure that all students or persons in schools that receive public funds under the authority of the Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education or a local public school district are held to the same standards and requirements in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Reading the supporting text, I think the gist of this is that there's hybrids out there, schools, whether they're charter schools or magnet schools, that are public schools that receive public funding, and the MASC is just asking that they are held to the same level of accountability that what we would consider the traditional public schools, which we at Littleton are. I'm in favor of supporting this. I think it's a reasonable expectation that any school receiving public money and that is under the auspices of the DESE. We're not talking about private schools. Strictly private schools are on their own.
this does say private schools.
Well,
But if they receive
but they
public
receive
funds.
public subsidies, funding, or support under state or federal law. So not all do,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you know. So, I mean, I'm not, it's not asking that I mean, it says works with the legislature and Board of Elementary and Secondary Education to ensure the accountability levels. It's
I mean, these schools, I guess it's important to point out, if the schools that are currently receiving public funds don't want to buy into the accountability measures that the rest of us are expected to adhere to, they have the opportunity to not take the public funds. It's a choice.
even that. Does anybody want to put a motion out there? That's fine.
No, the only two that I guess I feel really strongly, well, other than the one we just voted on, so 1 and 6.
All right, let's take them one at a time. So, 1 is rejecting the arming of educators. Resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committee rejects the notion of providing firearms to any educators.
I don't need to
Yeah.
debate that.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to accept referendum question 1 as proposed.
Seconded.
Okay, so motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and then 6, you said, Erica?
6.
Let's see. The way they put this into the thing is very hard to read. Resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees supports evidence-based reproductive health curriculum. Further, we call upon the U.S. Department of Education and the executive branch to stop their support of abstinence-only education. So this article is asking that health education and sex education be factually based and based on science and good practice, and it specifically does not want it to be based on abstinence-only education, which I don't think we do in Massachusetts, correct?
No.
But also is asking that the supporting documentation is encouraging the federal government not to divert money that is specifically for what we support in Massachusetts in terms of that towards abstinence only. So it's not only a question of not supporting abstinence only, but don't starve the alternative to health and sex education. All right. Does anybody want to make a motion on that one?
I make a motion to support the resolutions.
Article 6.
Article 6.
Resolution 6.
Yes.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. All those in favor, actually, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Are there any other ones that we thought we wanted to take a look at?
Resolution 3.
3.
Elimination of the Federal Department of Education.
Yeah, that's an important one.
Right. That the Massachusetts Association of School Committees works with the federal delegation to reject any notion of combining the U.S. Department of Education with other government departments. My only thought about this one is that, you know, there's been almost, not even, I wouldn't even call it a trial balloon. There's rumors that conceivably this particular administration may decide to do that. There's been no formal legislation or plans put forth. I understand from the MASC's point of view, well, if they do it after our conference, it's going to be harder for us to get our membership to, you know, be able to get on page on this. But at the moment, I feel like they're trying to solve or address an issue that hasn't really come to the forefront. But that's just my personal opinion on it. Anybody else?
I do think it's important. There have been lots of I guess I'm losing the word, but they've
Initiatives
eliminated
or-
lots of guidelines and laws that are designed to protect us. So I feel like that is definitely something that could happen, and
Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we support Resolution 3.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any other further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right. Anything else? Anybody else is good with the rest of them? We'll take no position on the other ones?
I don't see why we shouldn't discuss Resolution 9.
Number 9.
Um,
Resolved that the MASC urges the legislature to amend state laws to require that parents and students be provided with a copy via email or mail of all the assessments that are performed for students in their family's preferred language at least 5 days prior to any meeting at which parents and students will review a proposed individual education plan. So basically just asking that the amend the state law to give more time for families to get the materials that are going to be presented at an IEP meeting in their native language so that they ostensibly can prepare for that meeting. Any discussion or thoughts? Anybody want to make a motion?
I make a motion to support Resolution 9.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No one. All right, very good. Anything else?
The only other one you may want to look at is the tail end of 8. We always have a conversation about the fact that Chapter 70 funding remains flat. And
Yes, so this is
I'm not sure
regarding
whether it's
potential
something
sports wagering. Resolved that the MASC, hold on. Resolved that the MASC requests that should the general court enact legislation to legalize wagering on sporting events, the general court shall commit a portion of the revenues generated from sports wagering to public education.
So for this, we wouldn't be making a statement on how we feel about the sports wagering, just
Correct.
just that if it does pass, some of that money should go to.
That the MASC would lobby the legislature to try to get them to do that. It's not uncommon for when new social opportunities are introduced in a state, whether it's gambling, we saw it with the marijuana laws, that, because usually those activities are pretty heavily taxed, and that those, a lot of times, the legislatures will earmark certain percentages of those funds towards particular, for instance, I know already that on the gambling legislation, not the sports wagering, because that hasn't come up in front of the legislature, but the casino legislation, that money's going to go towards anti-gambling, compulsive gambling, stuff like that. So it's not unheard of. My only opinion on this is, again, they're way out in front. There is no legislation. I agree with Dr. Clenchey that, public funding in Chapter 70, but my attitude would be, I'm really not interested in a piecemeal approach. I would rather, if the MASC is going to get on the legislature about school funding, it should be in a holistic, overall aspect, which they do constantly. And I just think this would be, I don't want them to stop or lessen their focus on the whole solution just to focus on one narrow, very narrow aspect of funding that hasn't even been proposed yet.
Good point.
That's just my personal opinion. I would never say no if they wanted to give us more money. I would never say that's a terrible idea, why would we do that? But if anybody feels differently and wants to put a motion out, let me know. No? Okay.
Yeah, I'm good taking no position on this one.
All right, anything else? I think we've covered almost all of them. All right, thank you. Jen, you're the one going, right?
Yeah, yes.
So you have to do what we just told you to do.
Yeah.
There's no freelancing
I will
on
do
that.
that.
Okay? That's why we take them. All right, next on the new business, a discussion in regard to the November 8th, 2018 school committee member meeting because the superintendent and one SC member will not be in attendance at our school committee meeting because they'll be living the high life. I mean, going down to the MASC conference. Do we want to think about canceling that meeting for the time being and trying to reschedule it if necessary as we try to get through all of the work we're trying to get done this year? I personally feel like missing both the superintendent and a member. I really don't want to have a meeting of anything substantive. And if we're not going to do anything substantive, why are we meeting?
Do we have anything on the agenda for that meeting yet?
I don't know, Dr. Clenchey, what are your thoughts about the overall, because you're...
We can rearrange our schedule of presentations.
Everything that's to be presented November 8th can be folded into November 29th.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we can make it happen, make it work.
And if we have to, space it out a little bit, that's fine too, beyond the other meetings. And if we do feel, as we go through the year, that we need another meeting, we'll just do it. And, maybe that's the way to look at it is, we'll take 1 week off and keep it in our hip pocket in reserve for if things get busy with other issues, and then we can just tell ourselves, well, we got a little vacation in November, we're gonna have to suck it up and meet 2 weeks in a row or something like that. Okay? I'm not advocating
Blizzard
for
bag
it.
day? School committee blizzard bags?
All right, is there any other new business? All right, seeing none. Any interested citizens? Seeing none. Go to subcommittee reports, PMBC, Daryl's not here. Budget subcommittee, we had our first budget subcommittee meeting last week. We are effectively going to meet on alternating Thursdays, the weeks opposite of when we meet as a group. We'll be meeting. Really, all we did was kind of set our calendar for getting the work done relative to getting our initial budget proposal out and available for public consumption. And we agreed that we would do that at the November 29th meeting. We will be ready to make our initial budget proposal, which will include what we think we need to maintain our level servicing, including our raises for staff, existing staff, any other expense increases relative to special education or any other operations. It will also include the administration's list of priorities for any potential additional staffing and spending. In the second SRO will be on that list, along with anything else that the administration identifies through the budget, initial budget proposal process. So that is a meeting that if people are thinking they want to come and hear what our list of priorities are and start the debate on that, that would be a good one to mark on your calendar, November 29th. Okay? That's it for budget subcommittee, policy subcommittee?
We will have stuff for the next meeting, I believe it is. So, yeah, it won't be the 8th, but whenever we
Right, okay. All right. Anything else? I would like a very brief executive session relative to contract negotiations. So I need a motion that looks like that.
Make a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of contract negotiations with no intention to return to open session.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. This is a roll call vote. Erica?
Aye. Oh.
Wait, Matt?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
And I say aye as well. Thank you, everyone.